Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Christology podcast. Today, we are so excited to have a special guest, Amir, and this is him and his family on the beach. And I'm going to pass it over to Dave.
Thanks, Laura. Welcome, Christology podcast. This is our second guest ever. This is Amir. My God, I don't even know where to start. So we'll start with my God. Lord God, thank you for friendship. Thank you for creating us and making us to search for answers, to seek you, and just for the whole journey. Thank you, Lord God. We pray you guide us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
It's like to the day that we met, right?
Yeah,
Almost
12 years ago.
12 years ago, we met and we clicked, and we haven't seen each other since till last night. And you got in here about 8 o'clock, and we talked nonstop for 4 hours. And I know I have a podcast, but I'm not a talker, man. But with you, sir, my goodness, we just went and went and went. So, Amir, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Amir was at another friend's retirement ceremony at the unit yesterday. He made, as you said, you made two friends. This gentleman, friend of yours, and me. And I retired in 2014. We've kept in touch ever since. You've had a journey, man. Like, we clicked because I'm from Detroit inner city. You're from Cairo. They're similar, but they're not. But the struggle is the same. So we want to kind of talk about suffering, character building, perseverance, and hope. And you've been through it, man. Probably, I think more than anybody I know, you've been through it.
Oh man, no. You just keep doing this. No. I had it easy compared to a lot.
How old are you now? I don't. 30?
40.
Oh, you're 40.
I just turned 40 in October.
So man, it's like learning so much. We're like, we got to stop and just hit record. And we kept talking. Here's a picture. You're a bodybuilder. You're like the most giant dude I've ever seen.
We tried to talk him into giving us a picture, but he didn't want to. So
He's humble.
Too much body fat. Let me see.
So man, Amir, gosh, we met. You speak. What stood out at first? Well, two things. We interviewed you at the unit to be a language instructor. You speak perfect English and perfect Arabic, and that is rare, I think. So it's like, wow, we need this guy.
yeah, can you say something? I'll put you on the spot. Do some Arabic because your English is so perfect.
Do some Arabic. Okay. Actually, you can't speak Arabic.
Not anymore.
Do some Arabic. Yeah, it'll come.
Shukran jazilan. Alabia fatikum.
See, there's certain letters like I can't hit the O.
we're ممكن أقول لأبويا أمي ازيكم؟
Yeah,
Saying hello
perfect.
to
وأبويا
mom and dad.
بالسلامة إن شاء الله أبويا.
Oh,
But it's just telling my dad, and hopefully he get better. He's in the hospital at the moment.
Well, thank you, Amir, for being there with that going on. Like you just found out last night.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to fly home today.
Here's a-
The trip short. Yeah.
here's a picture of his family at church, his mom and his dad. I don't know what year that's from. Okay, back to you guys.
So thank you, man. Like there's just a lot going on. So thanks for being there. Anyways, we talk a lot in kind of flurries, right? Text, always texting. We go through stuff. And in the last couple of years, something changed with you and with me. I guess what I'm trying to say is we show our weaknesses to each other.
Absolutely.
We're vulnerable and we find strength in that. And I love that with this podcast because I don't like it, but every time I face that tank and walk into that thing, there's a reward. Like you call him a big bad wuss. That's funny instead of big bad wolf.
That's great. I have never heard that.
It's my the trademark, but please.
So you, gosh, man, Cairo. You lived in Mahdi.
I grew up in a suburb of Cairo. Yeah. Very, very nice. I mean, I've had a lot of fond memories of the place. one of the few, very few areas in Cairo where it has a lot of greenery and trees. Um, it was a British barracks back when the British were in Egypt, and so it was designed all in roundabouts, and it was actually well thought out, out before and planned before. So it's very different to what you will see in other areas of Cairo. Just like how the downtown area is very also well thought out and implemented.
Oops.
And we're gonna pull some,
Actually, I just did. I pulled
Yeah.
up, this is Google Earth. We were just messing with it this morning, so it's not a great shot, but this was 1985
oh, wow.
when you were growing up. And then, let's see. Okay, and then this is currently in this area here. I don't think I can use my pointer on it, but right in the middle there is the school, your like elementary through high school.
Yeah.
And you said that it used to be, tell us about that picture.
Yeah, that was also the ballpark for Americans living in Cairo at the time, usually from the embassy, from the diplomatic mission, the Marine security guards.
Before it became your school.
It was my school, but they rented those grounds
Okay.
to Americans in Cairo, basically to convert and make a ballpark for them there. I mean, it was a pretty sizable diplomatic mission in Cairo. It was the largest until Iraq, and then Iraq became the largest American diplomatic mission in the Middle East.
The reason that I put that picture up there, because you said something really interesting earlier. You said that you were on one side of the fence and then on the other side of the fence. So you tell us that.
Yeah, well, growing up, it was my school, so I mean, I spent years and years there, and on weekends, if I happened to go to the school, not for school purposes, but if I happened to be there hanging out, then I would see just Americans and wearing their baseball, clothes and just playing ball and softball mostly. But it was pretty cool to see that, and because I mean, I only saw those people on TV, right? That's when I mean, baseball is not a thing you see in Egypt, so you see those guys. Oh man, that looks like the guy in the movie.
Oh right, yeah.
And obviously they're all American. So, well, mostly from what I thought, at least.
Yeah. And how old were you then?
Maybe the image in my mind that I'm kind of referring to, I think maybe I was 6th or 7th grade, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
You told me the progression last night, because we interviewed you and you said, how is your English so perfect? Well, I played baseball and I hung around the embassy, and it was kind of like, okay, but what else? And he told me this progression last night of he met a guy, and it was just this.
Yeah.
He got a badge, and then
Hey, Eric. So Eric, my buddy Eric. So again, just happened to be born the right place, right time, I guess. And being a Mahdi was such a blessing. At the time that I bumped into Eric through an Egyptian friend, and Eric was in Egypt with his father, who was a Vietnam veteran working as a contractor for an American company. And we just clicked, and he was my first American friend. He was the person that I think he was a catalyst for me being here today in so many ways. And Eric's family was so gracious. They took me in, and I felt like one of them immediately. His brother Aaron also was in the army, and actually I think at some point deployed in support of the unit as a reservist.
Was that at that same time frame? You were a child when you met him?
So basically around maybe 19 years old is when I met Eric and Aaron, and they were, so Eric is a couple of years younger, and Aaron is a couple more younger, and we just hung out, did teenage stuff, around Cairo, and one day, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna go see my dad or something about his dad at the ballpark." And I said, "Sure, where's the ballpark?" He said, "At the school." And I was like, "Oh, dude, that's where I went to school." And it was fine. We just strolled over there or took a taxi. I can't remember. Mine is very small. It's like maybe all in all, maybe like 4 square miles or something. You can fact check me. I don't know, but I'm just trying to give how small, an idea of how small it is. But
I'm just flipping real quick. I just want to show a picture of this video game that used to play as a child,
Yeah.
and we'll come back to that and why that's so fun. A fun little fact.
Yeah.
All right, back to your story.
Yeah. So we stroll over there, and now I'm on the other side of the fence. Like I said last night, a few years earlier, I was watching, sitting in the grass, and just on a nice, beautiful sunny day in Cairo, watching Americans playing ball. And now I'm here getting introduced to all of those Americans. And, I was at the time very, very extroverted and just had a lot of passion of getting to know people and energy. And so I just immediately started talking about people. And there was a group of guys standing there by their dugout, and they were about to play, and just all well built, the similar age group, and I was like gravitated immediately to those guys. And I remember either asked Eric, who are those guys, or how can I play with them? And he said, he introduced me to one of them, and he said, "Yeah, we're in the Marines, and Marine security guards at the embassy." And we just had a conversation. And immediately I was gravitated to those guys. And in my mind, at this moment, I thought I want to be a Marine. But at this moment also, there were things that had, transpired before that I already knew so much about the U.S. military from like movies like Black Hawk Down, and so I have it. So when they said that, immediately some images played in my mind from the movie. At the time, I didn't really discern much between what a Marine is, a Ranger, or I didn't know much about the military at the time. But that was a big door opener to learning more about them, and they were very truly. The Marines do a great job on showing that pride. They have that. They carry it around. It's just like, and it's just energetic and energizing.
Yeah.
And just from there, I immediately, clicked with them, and I asked to play ball with them, and then from one person, from Eric, to literally, I think, hundreds of Americans in Cairo that came through the for the mission with their State Department or other agencies, and from Marines or other military personnel, till I ended up with Christine, my wife.
And I think what's coming to me as you're talking every time, but especially right now, is this heaviness that you have, but not. It's also an attraction. It's what makes you you. And like, I hate to bring this up, but I love to bring it up because let's honor your sister. My brother, you lost a sister early on in life to cancer, and I mean that shapes us.
Absolutely.
And just to be honest, this is the Christology podcast. That means we're talking about who Christ is. So we were talking last night, your faith was strong back then, and then it wasn't for times, and that's.
Yeah. It's funny when we were talking last night, and I mentioned the equation thing, and I was saying, for me, I was born and raised Christian in Egypt, and that for those who may not know, it's called Coptic Christian. I would be referred to as a Copt. We're kind of an ethno-religious group within Egypt. I think the figures could be like people say from 5 to 10%, of the population. We pride ourselves of being indigenous folks, of Egypt before all the occupiers came up, over the years. And so faith was part of my life all the time. I mean, I was telling Dave also last night and Christine before I left, and thinking to myself, well, sometimes I feel faith is not that much in my life anymore. It's not the same way it used to be. comparatively, and not even in the same way anymore. Like even if there's any of it, to a degree compared to before, it's just not the same way I'm used to seeing it. The image is different. They're distorted or new or updated. So for me, I was struggling to come on the podcast and try, and represent something that I may not be the best representative of anymore. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I have a question about that though. Just backing up a little bit. So growing up, you were a Christian. Was that difficult being the minority? And
Absolutely.
was your family very, did you go to church? Did you worship at home? Like what I would consider as an American Christian growing up. And then could you be openly Christian? Were you in a neighborhood that was, okay? Or I'm really dumb on the topic. So hopefully there's some other dumb people out there with me.
No, you're not anymore. But so yeah, actually awesome questions. Thank you for asking them. So yes and no to some of the hardship. It may not be a daily thing, but it is a daily thing depending on the situation, depending who you are, where you live, who you're dealing with, and what kind of transaction you're having with the other person, and also how their faith affects them. So Egypt is a predominantly Muslim nation with Muslim laws, and there are a percentage of extremists there, but also a very high percentage of ignorance and uneducation. It's just illiteracy, and so you have to. So the bad guy could be a bad guy intentionally or unintentionally. It could be somebody who just doesn't accept you because he was taught hate from day one, because that's just what they did. Whether it's a self-preservation mechanism they did because they didn't want their kids to be, influenced by our faith in a way or another, or because that person is Muslim Brotherhood or Islamic Jihad or any of those, radicalized Muslim groups that has malintent in their heart for you too. So and I've dealt with all of them. I've dealt with the whole rainbow, of in the society. I've dealt with very poor people in Egypt. I've dealt with very rich and wealthy people in Egypt, and everything in between. And yeah, most of the time, it was my life. So I didn't know any different. So for me, it was the normal. But the truth is, on so many occasions, it was hard. It was difficult, and discrimination was just part of the daily life. And also, there were flare-ups where certain events took place and transpired that the hate was completely, hate. We hate you. Yeah.
So Dave, I don't know if this corresponds at all to what Amir's talking about, but you were in Egypt during a difficult time. Is it the same thing, or should we save that for another conversation?
Well, what helped me was, so that happened before we met. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, this is basically, day born all the way to meeting Eric, for example, in 2000 and around, I think 2002. It was where the ballpark thing started, or 3 max. I can't pin the date because
Your interview at the unit was
2012. Yeah.
Okay, so the Arab Spring was 2011.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I happened to be in Cairo, and we kind of told the story, but I had learned Arabic the year before, 17, and some culture, and lived with the Jewish family. That was just, harvested olives and made olive oil. It was eye-opening. It changed my life. So I knew I was in Cairo having coffee, working my Arabic, trying to. And we heard this mob coming down the street, and the shopkeeper's eyes got big. And we had just been talking for 2 or 3 minutes. He saw them come, and he said, "You got to come with me." And I believed him. I knew that I was his guest. And he took me in the back of his clothing shop and put me behind some t-shirts, and they came through, and, then I realized the magnitude of it, but so it's dangerous, but yet there's this love there. That's what I'm trying to get at. And that's what's in you. And we're interviewing you at the unit, Laura, you asked me the other day, and 2012, so not even a year after this, his whole country is changing.
Yeah, and to put in perspective quickly, it was a year before that I moved to the US too. So,
Oh.
so in,
Oh,
2000,
wow.
in 2000, yeah, it was really, you know, really crazy. I mean, Dave knows the story, all of the story, so that the gaps will be filled quickly for him. But basically, maybe you want
Take
to
your
just
time, yeah,
say
no.
quickly what happened.
Yeah.
So you know, to fast forward the events to give, you know, listeners or viewers an idea on, you know, the timeline of things. So yes, ballpark, the Marines, the passion for belonging to a group that took me in, whether it's Eric's family, and Aaron and his father Paul and brother Daniel Burgett. You know, it's everybody. I just want to mention their name because I wanted to honor all of them. To the Marines, to, you know, Philip Bauer, was a very close friend of mine from one of those Marine security guards. To going through all and eventually meeting my wife Christine and us getting married and then the decision for me to join the military has come, and then 2010 is when I first moved to America, and then 2011 Dave was in Egypt. 2012 he's interviewing me, you know, and 12 years later now he's interviewing me again, so makes me think.
Oh, that's great.
Makes me think that he just every time we have to see it, yeah, he wants to make an interview. So there's an obsession there. I don't know why.
I don't need it, but bro, like, how many other people am I like that with, Laura? Like,
Not many.
not many non-sexual man crushes. So
Okay. Moving on.
it is what it is. Sorry, Paul. I'm moving in. No, there's this freaking.
My wife calls me gay all the time because of those friendships.
There's an attraction to your heart. And I'm always trying to get at heart. When I coached high school football, somebody said it's not about heart. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'm not coaching here then. Like, yes, it's all about heart. And I'm not saying our hearts are inherently good, but what I'm seeing, observing what I'm seeing is that suffering. I can see it in your eyes right now, man. You suffered like nobody I know. Builds this character. You just were talking about names because you want to honor them.
Mhm.
Who does that?
I can't remember any of the names.
We should do that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
Character,
that is good.
perseverance. You
Right.
know, he's leads to hope.
Making a life.
Yeah.
You know, I just wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for all those people and their grace. I mean, those people, again, you're living in a country where you've never felt like it's home, and you suddenly bump into random people not from your country. Maybe they're not supposed to be there even, but they lend a hand and they show what I always thought America was. I mean, I learned about America from TV and movies and shows and music.
And then harsh reality.
Well, the yin yang, right? The little black dot in the big white, you know, part. But so without them, I wouldn't have been here in so many ways. So I'm very thankful for them and their willingness to be who they are and their kindness and in every way. I mean, to include Christine, my wife, and you know what she put up with all through the years, you know. So,
but look what's happening. I think on a micro level, like we're bypassing racism or whatever you want to call it. You know, Arab American, just you're a Coptic Christian, but just all these problems that are in the news. Solutions are happening on a micro level, but on the macro, we see disaster and chaos and end of the world. You know, there's always something going on.
Yeah, it's easier. It's easier for any group of people to just profile another group of people. And I mean, one of my best friends is Ahmed, and you know, I'll send him the link. But you know, he's Ahmed. You know, he's a lifelong friend. You know, born and raised Muslim, still Muslim, and so it's can't villainize and make a whole group of people bad, Like I said, there are some excuses for some that hate unintentionally. There are people that hate unintentionally, whether they're just getting dragged because of the flow of the current of others around them. They're just going that way and they're going along. And indeed some exist, but I think they're a very minority in all societies that intentionally hate.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. That's such a good point. So he was your best friend as you were growing up as a child?
Yeah, and obviously one of many, but he's one of the few that I continue to keep in touch with after leaving Egypt, and he lives in Canada now, and we're still in touch with almost daily. And so many other, so many other Muslim friends that I still keep in touch. Maybe every few months or a couple of years, we just reach out to each other and just check on one another. But I was very lucky to again have been brought up in Mali, where there were moderate Egyptians in general. They were more educated. They didn't, even if the imam in the mosque was preaching hate, they weren't listening, or they didn't care. They zoned that part out. They were there for their spiritual, religious purposes, not interested in let's leave the mosque and go kill all the Jews and the Christians.
Yeah, I don't think that's said enough, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
or dug into, or hey, let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. You were friends as children. Did it even matter? I think as kids we don't care about any of that.
No.
But do parents interfere? And it sounds like they weren't that type of family, or but it's interesting culturally.
Yeah, this specific family, Ahmed's family, but also some of the other close Muslim friends I had, never felt that I was treated differently by their families. But Ahmed's family is more specific and more unique, because to me it's like Eric's family. Also, I felt another home I had, fully, like I can walk in, open the fridge and grab something. I feel like Joey and friends.
What's your struggle now, Amir? What's in your heart now?
Oh Lord. What's not?
Yeah.
Years and years of seeing things happening and transpiring in my life, multiple traumas and painful events that I've seen and experienced, and some victories and some a lot of blessings, a lot of along the way, and but like I said to you last night, when I started, let me clarify this, because so people can understand. So Jesus at the center. Well, in a different way for me today. Before when I was born, raised Christian, Jesus was at the center because that's what I was taught. That's how I was raised. That was my faith. And also as a Coptic Christian, it was my identity, because for example, as a Christian in America, in a way, you're not discriminated against in that way. Yeah, and there's some religious, obviously, friction in America, just as anywhere else in the world. But maybe somebody, a Jew would empathize with me more and understand me and a Jew would know one another more, because
That's interesting.
the level of persecution around the world.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
To us as a very minuscule minority,
It's more relatable.
Yes. So it was my identity as well. So just like how, I came to learn about my Jewish DNA, like I told you later in life, that I have a little bit of Jewish in me, and that made me learn more about, the Jewish people. But I learned also that being a Jew, for example, for a Jew, not necessarily means I'm Jewish by religious affiliation. It's an ethnicity. It's a belonging to a group of. So eventually, I learned, well, that's what a Coptic Christian is. It's an ethno-religious group as well. You're not just a Christian because you believe in Christ and you go to church and do those things, but also because you belong to that specific group of people.
Tradition.
Correct.
Very deep tradition.
And shared DNA, the whole deal, you can identify that group of people. So,
like the first church.
Correct, in so many ways. And Alexandria, where a lot of this started. So again, I say this because, I was hesitant to come on the podcast. I was hesitant because I'm not the best person in my own judgment to be representing any of this at the moment, because of the challenges I have in how I'm addressing them.
You're actually awesome, Amir. Like, this is such a great podcast. I'm really enjoying it. So keep going. You're doing great.
I'm not awesome. I'm just saying that.
It could be Jesus at the center, ? Like for conversation. It's not a command.
Absolutely. And that's why the reason I wanted to mention it is because as I was struggling with the thought, man, Dave wants to interview me again. Gosh, this guy. It's not enough what happened the first time. So I'm thinking about it and I'm dreading, the acceptance, right? And doing this. But he's really dear to me. And I want to do this for him. Because I'm honoring him as well as he also, because I mentioned all those lists of people, but Dave also is on that list, right? And the other gentleman that I attended his retirement yesterday. So I struggled when I was even talking to Christina. I'm like, what do I tell him? What do I tell him? I'm in a doubt phase now. I'm investigating Jesus now. I'm putting Jesus on a stand and talking. Maybe I'm even investigating God, like in all sense, right? And those close to me enough, I say that too. Not a lot of people know that. So how do I do this? And then I realized, well, it's my identity. It's always been my identity. So whether I call myself Christian today, I call myself Amir, I call myself anything, the truth is I'm a Coptic Christian. And that was a huge part of my life till this day, and it probably will go with me to the grave. So Jesus was and still at the center in so many ways because my values, the way I was brought up, things that affected me from the Bible and shaped my way of thinking and my perception of humanity and how I treated Muslims, even though I was treated bad by some. And my fellow Egyptians at the time, it all ties in. So whether Jesus is at the center now in what I said last night in a good or a bad way in my book, right? It's whether it's a distorted image or the perfect image that some Christians will immediately show to me now, it doesn't matter because he's still there in a way or another. Yeah. So that's what we were talking about last night. I said I'm investigating him versus just following him.
Versus defending him blindly, which is what I did for a long time. Which to me is more commendable than just not looking into it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, again, I have those deep conversations with Dave and sometimes even with Ahmed, my friend, and I say things to him even way more challenging because we're totally different faith too, and so I would throw very strong questions and arguments at him, and it's just my way of I want to know, and the thing is, everybody rushes to the aid of God in whatever form they call him, whether they call him Allah, Jesus, or if there's anything else people use. People rush to defend God because everybody's God's attorney. Well, in my book, if God is God, let him be the big boy. Why are you in his aid? Why do you have to defend his image? Why don't you just let him represent himself?
That's a great question. You said researching or digging into it. I mean, that's the whole podcast. These are such great ideas that we don't always think about.
Yeah, so I say all this to say, yeah, I made the decision to come on because I don't do things not from the heart. I can't. There's no way. So unless you give me a script, I'll read it, and then that's a different story. But so I wanted to do it from the heart, and that's how the evolution of my decision to do it, not let you down, honor you, and at the same time talk about something relevant to whoever wants to listen to something.
Well, you told me some things last night that I just want to like vouch for in as much as I can with what I've told my story a million times. I'm sick of it. I don't know why everybody else isn't sick of it, but I will use it as long as people want to hear it to God's glory. I've seen a lot. I've talked about a lot, maybe half of it. You told me some things that I could never imagine, and there were brutal, just observations that you saw, and super painful, man. And that's what shapes us. And that happened to me in Detroit. In Michigan, growing up, I was just abused, and I was doing a podcast with Tom Brown, the Australian SAS, and asked me about my childhood, and that would never happen here. I'm not going to be fearful now of my unit that I gave 10 years of my life to, right? Because this is taboo. I'm not going to talk about things I don't need to talk about, but I am going to be vulnerable and say, man, there was some crazy stuff that happened, and we were just hitting on it. I had this stepbrother abuse me and my little brother, who's dead now, who hung himself because he couldn't work that crap out. Had he talked about it, like the more I talk about it, the better I get. And you knew right away. You're like, man, that's what made you able to do selection and go to RIP and make it in the Rangers twice. And you're absolutely right. Because when I see athletes and we're walking 50 miles today and we're at 26 and they're like, oh, my feet hurt. I'm like, that's just physical pain, man. That's nothing. Mm-hmm. And you nailed it. Like, so it motivates me more and more. That's exactly how I made it.
Yeah. No, it definitely would. And it's really, for lack of better words at the moment, it's really funny when I hear Dave saying that I've seen painful stuff. Mm-hmm. To me, I sit here and I look at Dave and I'm like, man, I feel sorry for Dave. I think Dave see more painful stuff. And to put it in context, this guy is a military elite warrior, specifically a unit member at some point. And, while I had dreams about belonging to that group one day in my life, played a video game called Delta Force, all those things. And then I just take a moment and think about what any of this group of people may have seen, how they have went through it, and the effects. Understanding trauma in general, just because I have complex trauma in my life, I project that trauma on him, and I can almost feel and see what he's been through, playing in my mind. So when I'm shocked to see him shocked to my traumas, but trauma is trauma, and wherever you acquire it, it doesn't really matter. The source of trauma. That's why, for example, PTSD is just as a label for all of our challenges, right? It doesn't matter where you acquired it from. At one point, I was really mad that my trauma wasn't acquired from something cool that I can go around and say, hey man, I did this and that, and look at me.
Let me tell you, that doesn't work though, because I did the same thing when I went back in the Army and after 9/11. I said, all right, now I'm going to do another war, and that'll make 4 wars. I can blame anything on that. And I did, and I drank alcohol again, which I can't do. I'm a recovering alcoholic, 15 years sober this July. And I did exactly that, and I used it, but I destroyed myself. So it didn't work. It wasn't real.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Nora, and I share a little bit of that with you too, because at some point I was a victim in my mind too, in so many ways. So,
I was just going to say that, I had trauma in my life, but I had no idea that I had trauma in my life, because it wasn't like everybody else's. It wasn't.
I totally get what you're saying because the military brought attention to PTSD in general.
Yeah.
I mean, those who had it, those who had the label, or those who had been through clear traumatic events had it, but there's trauma acquired over a period of time. There's trauma acquired from one instance. So there's, just like any wound physically, you can get a scratch, or you can get a stab, or you can get scratched over 1 million times over 1 million days. And, so whether however you acquire your trauma and where you acquire it from in depth and that's all personal. And again, I didn't know about my traumas, that they were called traumas, till really I went through the army and had my little issues there. They may have not been little, but at the moment I'm just going to downplay that. But the bottom line is, then you when you're finally done with having trauma is when you learn about trauma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, as I think about military members in general and unit members very specifically, just because I'm very fond of Dave here and my other friend, it's amazing to see them functioning just fine, doing the best that the best can do in the world. And then, their traumas is not acquired at the last day of service. But their trauma doesn't show till after service.
Maybe.
Because one, maybe you don't call it trauma. Two, maybe you're not knowledgeable about trauma. Or three, you're basically pushing stuff on the side because you got business to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're at work, you're just doing what you do. And then when you're done, when you're out, and then suddenly now you reflect. You reflect on the good, you reflect on the hardships, you reflect, and then suddenly something like pepper scratches, the surface, and opens that bottle, like we said.
Close the scab, yeah.
Yeah, and then the pus comes out.
Right. Yeah. And then it's a matter of what you do with it. And sometimes it's not something cool. Like, I just think about some people truly aren't affected by a lot of the crap. That's cool. I tend to think they had good normal upbringings.
Or they grew up with Jesus in their life and they knew maybe that you can just let go. That I think is probably the biggest problem, or it was the biggest problem for me, was that I didn't have to solve every problem. I always say that that's a woman thing, that we feel like we have to make everything perfect. But
Well, Amir, I wouldn't be alive without Laura, like, for sure. I mean, I told him a little bit about Suicide to Red Carpet, and not to make it about me, but we relate. I don't talk to my unit friends about this stuff. I don't. We never will.
And the very strange thing is not a lot of people I talk to about those things either. And then even sharing here with everybody how I'm feeling at the moment, it's because Dave is here. So in another setting, I wouldn't be talking about this. In another setting, I wouldn't be sharing those things. But it just happened. And again, it's that magic we talked about yesterday, and and how just we intersected at one point, and in that interview, and he's just.
But you'll see, like, this man from Romania sent me a message on Instagram. Thank you for this, and I have a question. And it was like, and then somebody from, Africa, Sierra Leone. I'm teaching at Paradise Church of God in Sierra Leone. What? It's weird how it happened, but like, now they want me to do it more. I'm like, why? Come on, you're Super Dave. They call me Super Dave. I'm like, it's so funny and cute, but like, I won't let go of that. That's so rewarding. And then you'll see it'll happen with you. People will be like, hey, can you ask Amir why, or this and this and that? And it's like, okay, that's why we do it. That's why we get vulnerable.
I'll trust Dave in the process here.
Yeah.
Nobody asked me anything. Most of the time, I don't think people want my opinion much, really. I have very strong opinions too, so I may repulse some.
But when you go to the Middle East, I was in Jerusalem, I was in Cairo, I was deep inside the Great Pyramid. And we were talking about the air. There is just something, like when I look in your eyes, when I see your parents, I see history. And it's so important that we interpret and know Scripture and our Lord in that context of history as much as we can. And when we can, when we have a person whose, family lines are directly from the first church, it's just like, oh my God, this is a treasure that we need to cherish and love. And I realized last night, Lord, and it feels so corny saying this, but like something told me to treasure this friendship with you. And so I have, and you have.
I mean, yeah, it could have been totally just, hey, I've met a lot of other people in that process of the interview, and like I said yesterday, only 2 people out of the people that I met, they've become dear friends of mine, and it's just how I honored the other gentleman, and I'm just cautious to throw names out because just in case he doesn't want to be named, but the bottom line, just how I honored him yesterday.
Oh yeah.
I honored him for being a human being. He was just being himself. He was not doing anything extra. He was not going through all what a unit person needs to go through to get to become a unit member, for example. All he did was just be kind to me and maintain that friendship. And we were able to just, and our friendship is totally different than me and Dave's in the way that we're able to. And I told Dave yesterday, we're able to just talk. We can talk forever. With the other gentleman, very few talk happens just because of his nature as a human being, and it's just the type of relationship. But we share other things, and it could be just, hey, thanks for your friendship. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Or hey man, I'm going through this, and just bounce it by him, and he gives me feedback and gets me on my feet very quickly. Very short, sweet conversations, usually over text, and we've met, over the years, a number of times. But those positive interactions and those steps as a human being, and I know he's a Christian, and however or wherever that kindness that he possesses came from and projects, that's what how he helped me.
That's the essence of what we're looking to get at. And Laura, I was just saying, it was quiet, retirement ceremony, blah, blah, blah. Any comments? Crickets. And Amir spoke. And I was like, that is so big. And that's what he's referring to. He, recognized his being a good human. All the war stories, that's cool, that's awesome, all the awards, right on. But this guy's also a good human, and here's why. But him speaking up is kind of reminding me of the football game where the guy who I knew was a private who's now in leadership. I said, how's that feel? That feels good. And then he corrected himself real quick because he didn't want to feel real good, because you can't. You can't.
Yeah, I kind of felt that at my retirement ceremony too. Like, they do all the awards, they do all the whatever. And then, some people actually said something, which was so rare. I didn't know that anybody liked me when I retired until that moment. It's 10 years later. I'm like, you could have said something sooner so that, I'd feel more comfortable here. But
You got the camera on you, right? So I'm going to try and make.
Yes. Now it's off.
Master Sergeant Laura Miller, Legion of Merit, right?
Yes.
How about that award? And I didn't even get that.
Yeah,
I don't know why
get
either. It's like,
trust me, I didn't get any. Well,
it's cool. But yeah, and I know who you're talking about, who's people that said things. I wasn't there, but that says so much. Grown men cried when Laura left. She was the vet tech at the unit for 9 years.
10. Give me that extra year.
Okay,
It was
round
long.
up. And
leap year.
she was the first one there. And when she went to apply, she was in the big army for 16 years.
Wow.
She applied, and her boss said, what?
He said they won't hire a woman And I said, well, they sent me an application, so I'm going to try anyway.
Made you, yeah, watch this,
Long time ago.
but you did it.
Yeah, so you said something about, and Dave, you were talking about history and religion and the intersect of that. And usually, as I examine religion, as I examine God, as I'm going through my struggles, and like you said, what's in your life at the moment, and all those things, if at any point in time you examine any idea or examine any logic in a silo, you're just harming yourself.
Amen.
Yeah, because this is how you end up not knowing anything. You could get very good at knowing one thing, but how it ties into life, how it ties with everything else. I mean, if you're a very religious person in any religious group, or even any political side of the aisle, and you're ingrained in that only, and I ask you a question outside of that, you'll be thrown off balance quickly. Because all you know and all you can answer me with, like, it's just very difficult if you ask a question that challenges religion, and specifically, let's say, Christianity in a way. Because I just don't want to point fingers at other religions, is all I'm trying to say here. And if all you can answer me is from the Bible, you've lost. You've lost because you don't know anything else. Well, what if I'm doubting the whole Bible? And that's all you know. So you're really hurting yourself by going in, not out.
Sort of predetermining your answer before you investigate.
You already know the truth in your mind, so you're not really seeking the truth anymore.
Right.
You're going in knowing it. So and you're answering your questions from your own truth. So you're it's like looking in a mirror, but thinking you're looking in a different world because it's there.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's actually nothing but a reflection of you in what you already thought.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, it's very critical what you said about you're exploring religion, whether for the first time or the millionth time, you're reading the same thing. It makes a huge difference knowing the history. I mean, I have to drop this because I like it, which is sometimes I see that some of the anti-Semites, for example, are Christians. And in my mind, do you know that you worship a Jew?
Yeah.
Your God is a Jew.
Yeah, you couldn't be more uninformed than that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Your God is Jewish.
That blows my mind.
He was never anything else. And if we call him Christ, if we call his followers Christians, it's just a choice to call that. But the guy was born and raised a Jew. So taking things out of context, like as in Jesus, for example, and making Jesus, if you're a Westerner, for example, you take Jesus, make him a Westerner. If you're an African and think Jesus was African, whatever, in what context, right? If you make him that, you're making him a reflection of who you are. Yep. And that's not the truth. It's not the truth. It's just your truth. It's what you want him to be because that's the image that you're comfortable with. Absolutely. Outside of context.
Absolutely. And he can handle it. Jesus, if he is, that's the point. If he is who he says he is, let's find out.
Yeah.
If not, let's move forward. But I think that question needs to be answered. Can we call this part one?
Yep.
Take a break in a second. We will come back and talk about some of the things you went through and whatever else. We'll finish it up because you have to get home. But again, thank you so much. We will be back with part two.
Thanks.
Did you hit stop recording on YouTube?
Now